You might be surprised to discover that it's actually your aversion to failing that's keeping you from being successful. Here are two pictures that'll illustrate the relationship of success and failure and help you move more effectively towards success. First of all, success and failure are inseparable. Inseparable. This is kind of surprising to many of us because we tend to think of success as being on one end of a continuum that has failure on the other end. Since they're opposites in our minds, we feel like if we just avoid failure at every step, we might eventually back our way into success. That doesn't work because success and failure aren't actually opposites or at opposite ends of the continuum. They're more like opposite sides of the same coin. In other words, they're very different, but they're always connected. They're inseparable. In fact, if you try to avoid failure, you'll find yourself avoiding success, and you'll wind up at what's really at the opposite end of the spectrum, which is mediocrity. If you don't want to be mediocre, and if you want to be successful, you always have to embrace some prospect of failure. That brings us to the second important picture, to deal with a concept of risk. That's the idea that success and failure aren't just inseparable, but they're proportional. Proportional. That means that they come together in equal sizes. Granted, they're different things, but they always are linked in equal proportion. For instance, you may want to pursue a relatively small success. I know it's hard to measure a success, but a small success is like getting a good parking place or making a good decision, and it comes with the risk of a small failure. After all, if it doesn't work out, it's just a small thing. It's not pleasant, but it's no big deal. You'll bounce back from it quickly. If you want to pursue a large success, that's the kind of big deal success that if all goes well, it gets kind of tangled up with your identity. It makes you feel great and worthwhile, really terrific. That kind of success comes with the risk of a similarly large failure. The kind of failure that, it puts a dent in you and you don't bounce back from it very quick. When you realize that success and failure come in equal proportion, you start recognizing the fact that when you don't want to risk a large failure, you start doing things to kind of constrain that, to risk less. You start cutting it down so that it's actually a smaller impact if you were to fail. And this all makes sense. It seems intuitive because it always feels better to have less at stake and risk a small failure. But since you now know they're connected, you recognize that all these efforts to cut back on the size of the failure you're risking are also quietly cutting back on the size of the success you might achieve, until eventually the success you might achieve isn't really the trophy you imagined at first. It's just a small trophy. Instead, if you want to reap the kind of amazing rewards or the large trophy that lets you be really excited or helps your team kind of be proud of itself for the future, commit yourself to actually managing the likelihood of failure. The likelihood. That means do things that make it less likely that it will occur. Don't hedge your bets. Just do the things that are good diligence and taking the extra steps in planning to make it really unlikely that you will fail, instead of addressing the magnitude or trying to decrease the magnitude of the failure you might experience. When you cut back on the magnitude, the size of the failure, you're also cutting back on the size of the success. So hopefully that's good food for thought, a couple pictures to help you understand the relationship of success and failure, and remember that they're inseparable and proportional.